In a nation of 300 million people, the handful of men and women we pick to be our leading opinion merchants are almost universally terrible writers. They don't inspire, challenge, lyricize, or make us laugh. Why would media companies steeped in money go so far out of their way to hire the most absolutely mediocre thinkers they can find? What's the value add? And the value add is obvious. The mainstream media is not looking for anybody who is going to challenge power. They're looking for stenographers, kind of like the conversation we were having earlier to what capacity is Ryan Grimm capitulating to this media structure that he himself has been critical of in the past, right? And I think that, when you look at somebody like that, and then you accelerate that all the way up to who's on MSNBC, who's on the nightly news. There's a reason why when we watched a Wolf Blitzer Jeopardy performance that it was fucking miserable, that he was the most clueless man because they actually want somebody who won't ask any questions. And so I think that's the perfect way to start off this conversation, and it's a way that we can make ourselves feel a little bit better on independent media, right? Like the people that they're having do our jobs on a large scale are probably some of the dumbest motherfuckers that you could meet.
Yeah, and that Jeopardy clip that we reacted to with Wolf Blitzer was so funny because not only was he dead wrong every time, but he was also the first to hit the buzzer every time, which I think says a lot about that mentality as well. Kind of the just the blatant arrogance.
Yeah, they absolutely believe that they know what's right and that they are the ones, dictating this correct, true, factual, information down to us. These reliable media sources who are the same people that were, touting weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, yeah, we'll get into that. We got some good quotes on WMB. That leads us to our next quote, I believe. We'll go to this one and then we can do a quick run to the next quote as well. The editorial opinions you're exposed to most often are not individual human points of view, but aggregated distillations of conventional wisdom. There is no punishment ever for going too far in pushing this form of market-tested non-thought. And then when we go to quote 3, you see, despite what the people in the business may claim today, the Iraq war story was not a tough call for reporters. The case for war against was always ridiculous and never rested on anything as compelling, even as the bogus Gulf of Tonkin charade, which itself was a towering monument to the slavish stupidity of the American press. Constantly, they have beclowned themselves by being absolutely unwilling to scrutinize any bit of information that has come from some quote-unquote intelligent source.
Yeah. And this is how the media allows people to fail upward. This myth of meritocracy that we have in this country, that it's nowhere, more blatant than in journalism, where people are, you got your Bill Crystals and your David Frums and who did the Axis of Evil speech, and these people that were the people that lied us into a war in Iraq, who now have Nicole Wallace is like George Bush's top staffer and advisor, and she's got a spot on MSNBC. It's not like these people are on Fox News now. They get spots on in primetime shows on MSNBC and NBC, and so it's in CNN and
it works in politics too. How many places trotted out Colin Powell before Biden got elected? Right? I mean, it's fucking astronomical. I mean, astronomical is the wrong word. I'm searching for the right adjective. It's fucking insane. It's crazy. It's ludicrous.
Yeah, and I think this speaks to one of the best points that Taibbi makes in this book. I think it's even in this chapter where he makes the point that you can't have opinions that are too outside of the mainstream when it comes to this industry. And obviously we were talking about people like Aaron Mate, who are kind of persona non grata because of the reporting that they've done and the kind of more fringe stories which they've broke. And so, those people are persona non grata, but there's really nothing wrong with being incorrect so long as everyone else is also incorrect. I forget the quote exactly, but Matt Taibbi basically says, being wrong is actually not a sin at all in the media so long as you're wrong alongside everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. You need to be wrong in favor of capitalism and of the, the established order, the status quo. If what you're saying, if you're wrong, but it's the, it's the, broad consensus, then you can continue to be wrong for as long as you want to be. Even if you're proven wrong, you will still maintain jobs, be promoted upward. That's no
even
problem.
if your lies result in, hundreds of thousands of deaths.
Over millions of deaths in
Yeah.
Iraq. Over 1 million casualties for Iraqis. It's absolutely despicable.
Yet YouTube treats those news outlets as, they promote those news outlets in their algorithm as the reliable sources of information. Yep. Meanwhile, the Vanguard and Radical Democracy Show, and even all these larger, left-wing independent media outlets. Just look at what happened to Jordan Sheridan, Tim Black. They've been absolutely suppressed to absurd levels. It's because they treat them as, in gray zone and
borderline content. Is what YouTube calls
borderline content. They call it borderline, which is like,
no, it's crazy that MSNBC has spent the last 5 or 10 years propping up the fucking Lincoln Project and people like John Bolton. But it's the Vanguard and the Radical Democracy and Jordan Sheridan and Tim Black, which get fucked by the algorithm at their expense.
Yeah.
But here we can read these last 2 quotes real quick. And then wrap our final thoughts on the chapter. But virtually no one in large commercial press said that any of this, he's referring to the weapons of mass destruction invading Iraq charade, was ridiculous. Nor did anyone bother to unspool the broader insane logic underpinning the argument for war. Why Iraq? Why not North Korea or Iran? Or for that matter, why not Saudi Arabia? Which leads us to our next quote. It's down at the very middle. Right? Oh, wait, is that 5?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. 15 of the 19 hijackers had been Saudis. We know this. Osama bin Laden was Saudi. The Saudi government had been only selectively cooperating with the United States in investigating the bombings. One of the convicted conspirators, Zacharias Moussaoui, had told authorities several members of the Saudi royal family helped finance the attacks. The U.S. government at the time had evidence of direct financial ties between Saudi Prince Bandar and at least 2 of the 9/11 bombers. Any one of these pieces of information, if delivered to this media corps back then, would have been spun instantly into fire-breathing pretext for invading Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia was a U.S. ally. We were not going to be in the business of replacing all undemocratic regimes in the area, just one disposable one.
Yeah.
It is a little bit interesting to me that Matt Taibbi doesn't talk about how 9/11 itself was used to go into these wars. And, regardless of the circumstances, they certainly did use that event, shock doctrine style, to justify these wars. And clearly he talks about the Gulf of Tonkin in the last quote. So he kind of understands the historical precedents for that kind of a thing, even though the Gulf of Tonkin was proven to be a false flag. And, 9/11 as of now, there's no sort of proof to that effect. But it is kind of interesting that he makes that connection. Whereas why didn't we use it or we could have used 9/11 as an excuse for going into Saudi Arabia. But I mean, even though the WMD thing was the ultimate actual justification, if it weren't for 9/11, I still don't think we could have justified that presence.
It wouldn't have been the public support.
Yeah, to the point that we could still be maintaining that invasion. But overall, I think that, it's a very good point by Taibbi.
Yeah, and then we have that final quote right there that I just wanted to read, that 6th one up at the top. And it says, this kind of thing that might prompt one to add a disclaimer to future CIA source stories. An official source whose employers have repeatedly spied on and lied to this particular newspaper claimed today. And he's talking about this in reference to, weapons of mass destruction, Gulf of all this shit. Instead, news outlets continually grant government sources the privileges of passing on uncheckable claims under the veil of anonymity and respectability. In the Judith Miller episode, the Times' excuse was that relying on the best American intelligence sources available at the time just underscored the routine nature of this brand of malpractice. The best American intel sources are still historically very unreliable. And this is that kind of shit that we saw all the time with Russiagate, right? Anonymous intelligence sources say CIA officials leaked to the blank. Inside sources told so-and-so about this. Oh, there's a dossier that implies this from a ex-blank, an ambassador to blank and blank. Like, this is the kind of shit where it's all lies, it's speculation, it's horse shit, right? And when you read about the Dirty Wars by Jeremy Scahill, and obviously we've just raised a bunch of issues with The Intercept, but that book is really well researched and really damn good. And he talks about how Dick Cheney would just fucking go in there and be like, you find me the fucking intel that says this and pick that out of it. I don't give a fuck. And they'd be like, oh, wait, that's not actually how we gather intelligence. Just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's true. And he'll be like, nope, give me this shit and fuck you or you're fired. Make sure that all this shit comes directly to me. And they're like, normally they have like all these protocols of like, oh, well, we have to sift through this information because it's just raw intel. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just information we've gathered. And then he's like, no, this is the information that's going to justify what the fuck I want to do. and present it to the public as fact.
Exactly. And in pretty much any, developing country, for example, any country with a non-democratic leader, you can probably find some quote unquote evidence to justify whatever it is the Pentagon is trying to justify. We've seen that over and over again with the brutal dictatorship of Assad, for example, or of North Korea. And of course, those things are true. It's not like they're straight up lying or fabricating things, although in some cases they are, but overall you have to wonder, why are they spotlighting? Why are they bringing this to attention at the expense of other things? Why are we, being told about this, but obviously not what's going on in Yemen? It all has to do with corruption. It all has to do
worthy
with
and unworthy victims.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to chapter 1.
Yeah, but
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, go ahead, Paul,
we're never talking about the Palestinians and what's happening over there or anything like that, because Israel's our ally, or what's happening in Yemen because Saudi Arabia is our ally. But we're so outraged, by what's going on in Syria with Assad, and so it's always, it's
or what's going on with the Uyghurs in China, right? We don't give a shit. It's all about and fucking Gavin and I aren't in China. We don't know what the fuck is going on with the Uyghurs, but I guarantee the United States doesn't give a fuck about it unless it has some geopolitical gain that it can get from planting that seed in your mind about what's going on there. They don't give a shit about human rights. Obviously, just look at the fucking kids that they're putting in cages for days, making them sleep on the floors. They don't have an interest in that shit.
Yemen is we care about Muslims now, when it's conveniently against somebody that we want to position ourselves in.
When was the United States prioritizing the well-being of Muslims around the world?
Especially in the country where we're literally funding the genocide, which is in Yemen, which has been described as the biggest human rights atrocity currently going on in the world.
Absolutely.
Oh, wait, Gavin. Joe Biden's only going to help Saudi Arabia defensively bomb and
only
starve
the defensive
Yemen.
bomb. Okay, sorry, only the offensive.
April Fools, we're going to do whatever the fuck we want to.